Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 American Society of Dowsers online convention. My name is Nick Salzman, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how to clear earthbound entities using a system I developed called Pendulum Apometrics. This is a new system that's based off of the study of something called Apometry that was developed by a guy named Dr. Lacerda in Porto Alegre, Brazil. He worked in the Garden Home, which was a hospital that housed people of mental illnesses. People that were schizophrenic, people that had dissociative identity disorders, bipolar, even observed some of the doppelganger phenomena inside this place. He worked for 30 years, learning how to alleviate people from certain kinds of spirit attachment and consciousness conflicts that would arise in these different individuals there. So what is Apometry? Apometry with Dr. Lacerda basically would talk about unfolding the human energy bodies into separate layers so that way they can be examined and treated specifically and individually. So when we use apometry is done with energetic pulses. For me, I use a count. Usually between 1 and 10 is sufficient with my counts, but every time I count, I visualize a pulse. This pulse of energy, if you were to visualize it, would be similar to people taking your photo with flash photography on the side of you. You would see the flash going on the side. So it's kind of like that. But also what I find works really, really well is with the use of apometry, when we count these energetic pulses, we can add another element to it. And for me, it's a snap of the finger. The snap of the finger helps create the pulse. Just like a shamanic drum is really good at breaking apart energy masses, but it's also good at materializing things that can be useful in clearing entities. So let's go ahead and talk about one of the first things we want to know about pendulum apometrics. This is going to be a big one for us. It's going to be called psychic capture, or creating a field of force. Essentially what we're doing is we're going to project our mental energy and we're going to place it around an entity. And once we place this energy around an entity, we pretty much have them within a bubble. Now, once they are in this bubble, say they're from a different timeline or from a past life or something like that, we can transport them back then and have them help observe what happened to them in order to help them understand the difficulties they're facing now. They may not understand why they're still earthbound. They may not even know that they're dead. So sometimes we can transport them to different lifetimes to help them understand. Sometimes we get entities that are afraid to go to the light because of some sort of religious dogma or something that's in place, something that they believe that there's punishment waiting for them. We can use this bubble and transport them to the Christic planes or the upper astral or to heaven or whatever you want to call it, and help kind of give them a glimpse. Once we give them a glimpse and kind of a preview of where they can go, and it's not doom and gloom where they're at, usually after they see that, they're a little bit more trusting and they're a lot more able to listen to the instructions that you're trying to explain to them. When we have this field of force, when we have this energetic bubble, we have the ability to affect what's inside of this bubble. So like say if we were able to put some sort of a cancer mass or a tumor inside of this bubble, we can affect the molecular structure of it with our mental energy and our intention. So this is something that I want us to keep in mind because it's going to be a very useful tool for us as we move forward with this. All right, so with this work, with apometry, they talk about the use of having what's called spirit doctors. I know a lot of people are more familiar with spirit guides and guardian angels, that kind of stuff, but there are spirit doctors, ones that are suited for the task in helping us remove dark entities and really helping us heal a lot of these entities, or even sometimes the living people. When people do like Reiki sessions and stuff, we can call upon them to assist us as well. So they can help the living, they can help the deceased, and they're also really good at basically helping us finalize a transition from some of these entities being earthbound and getting them to merge with their higher self or going back to the Christic planes. Because they exist on a higher vibration, most of the time they have the inability to help out unless we call them forth. Sometimes people are bothered by entities and they don't believe that their guardian angels or spirit guides or this and that were around. Why would they be around if they let this kind of stuff happen to them? It's a very common question I hear. And just understand that they exist on a higher vibration. But low vibration negative entities are very strong, and they emit a very strong frequency. And so because of that, it repels these types of assistance. It repels the angels, it repels the doctors. So what we have to do is when we tap into an entity, we want to raise its vibration. Raise its vibration to a state where now it can be on the same plane or level as our spirit doctors and spirit guides and guardian angels. Then that way, once they're on that same level, then they can connect a lot easier and help assist us with the work that we are doing. All right, let's talk a little bit about Decay, the astral body. I know probably one of the more common and popular names that people talk about of a dark entity being called demonic or a demon. Now, one of the less known things in classification, there are other things out there that can seem very demonic, that are non-human, but really the understanding I would like for you guys to understand today is that there's a lot of demonic entities that are out there that are really devolved humans. They have been human before. They have been born before. And what has happened is because they've been dead and they've stayed in the shadow and they stayed outside the wheel of reincarnation, they decay. Means that they reside in some of the lower astral realms. The lower astral realms are all around the earth, okay? So the intense magnetic field that's produced by the earth is something that they cannot escape. And so if you think of what are the natural life that kind of happens on earth, right? We see animals, we see insects, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's interesting how some of these entities can take on the appearance and be almost animal-like. They can have horns, snarly teeth, claws, maybe even wings, kind of weird stuff or whatnot, okay? So just kind of really depends. There's lots of variations here. And so what happens is when you have a human spirit, let's say someone that lived a really, really terrible life, they were really mean to people, they killed a lot of people, or they were just overall just weren't a very good person, right? When they would die, oftentimes they believe punishment is waiting for them. And so what they do is they decide not to go to the light. They decide not to cross over. They decide that they're going to carry on with what they're going to carry on with, and that's going to be the end of it. So what happens is the longer that they stay outside of the wheel of reincarnation and they vampirize other people and they prey upon other people, it damages and decays their astral body. And so they can take on, like I said, these different appearances where they can be more animal-like. They can be kind of rotten looking. I mean, there's a lot of different variations to it. But what happens, and when we pass away, we still have our astral body. We still have our mental body when we pass away. So after the astral decays and decays fully, what is only left is mental body. Mental body can be what's considered an ovoid personality. So if you were to try and put a drawing on this, it would essentially just kind of look like a head with no body, but still has all the characteristics of whatever this person did negatively in their life. If they were really manic, it would be manic. If they were angry, it would be angry. If they were inducing psychosis, well, that's exactly what they would do. So these ovoid personalities, they can be grouped together and they can be placed on other people by other darker energies, or even form into something that I call a collective, or even a group of lost souls. But this collective is really what it is. It's a group of ovoid personalities that can really cause a lot of problems with people. Some would know this as an egregore or anomalous psychic personality, something that people would hear talk to them and kind of give them a hard time. And it always just sounds like a group of people because they kind of are. So that's what kind of happens with a little bit of the decay of the astral body when you're deceased outside of the wheel of reincarnation. Let's talk a little bit about depolarization of negative mental stimuli. So through every lifetime, we carry a memory of certain things that have happened to us. We carry the joys, but really what affects us the most is the negative stuff, the different traumas we've lived through, the different things that we've experienced, frustrations, death of family members, anger, all that kind of stuff. It gets stored in a collective memory. And one of the other things this is also referred to is neutralizing toxic emotional trauma. And so emotions play a big part in how all of this works. So what happens is we have our conscious mind, we have our superconscious mind, and then we have our subconscious mind, which is also deemed as the unconscious mind. When we have these kinds of memories from different lifetimes, they would be stored in what's considered our subconscious. It's almost kind of like a file cabinet that we can look into the files of previous lifetimes and find the different troubles and different issues that we went against and all the different kind of hardships that we endured. We keep a memory of this kind of stuff. But like I said, mostly the trauma is not necessarily all the good stuff. One of the other negative mental stimuli that's out there is, like we talked about before, with religious dogmas. People believe that there's a heaven and hell, and so because of that, if they're good, they go one place, and if they're bad, they go another place. And so one of the things about heaven and hell is that these are just concepts of the mind, and the human spirit is not the mind, being that it is not bound to such beliefs. So spirit has free will. It can choose whether it wants to go to the light or not. And so most of the time, what we do is we're here to counsel them. We're here to help them understand that going to the light would actually serve their highest good and would actually be very helpful. So there's a lot of different ways we can help convince them to do it. And I mean, just like a car salesman or anybody that's trying to sell something, right? I mean, it's you have the customer and you ask them questions, but really the car salesman directs the conversation by asking the right questions. And so this is something that's developed over time, and it's something that if you practice it, you'll get good at. It's all about establishing the dialogue and directing the conversation. So depolarizing of negative mental stimuli and neutralizing toxic emotional trauma, these are going to be vital for us in order to be able to get some sort of a demonic entity that is, maybe rebellious into conforming and listening to us a lot more. Just to give you an example, if we were to come across a demonic entity for the first time in the house, they seem really vicious, or they seem really scary, or just really off-putting for many reasons they're uncomfortable to be around. Now, I want you to think about this real quick. What if you had someone that, say, came into the emergency room? When they came into the emergency room, they had their kid in their arms, and the kid was bleeding to death. And they were looking for someone to help their kid. They're screaming, they're panicking, they want people to help their kid, right? Now, everyone's whistling and walking around, ignoring them, not talking to them, not seeing them. It's not going to be long until you're going to start grabbing people and start trying to shake them and try and smack them and get them to listen to you because your kid needs help. You're in that much of an enraged state. You can't see anything besides that. I wouldn't necessarily call that person a bad person for being that way. They just really, really need help. So that's kind of a picture I want to paint for you guys. Hopefully that's a good metaphor for you to listen to. So let's talk a little bit about nourishing the Christ spark. So what is Christ spark? Christ spark is part of the divine. It is our soul. It is our soul matrix. In the study of Apometry, the bodies get separated into three main areas. You have your emotional astral body, which is deemed as one. Then you have your upper and lower mental body, which are deemed as the mental bodies. And then you have the Buddha body, or the Christic body, or the celestial body. Either way, the third one, the Buddha, refers to our being of soul. Okay, so every human entity, every human being has what's called a Christ spark. And as you can see in the photo, it sits right in the middle of the chest. So this would be something that, if it's a human energy, it's going to have a Christ spark. It's going to have a piece of God. It's going to have a piece of the blueprint of the divine, okay? If it is a non-human energy, it is going to be something that is going to be more a mental energy. Mental energy doesn't have a Christ spark, which actually seems to be easier to clear up. But that's the main difference. No matter how negative or evil or bad that we believe it is, it's always a Christ spark that we can help the healing through, okay? I don't know how many of you guys are into Disney movies, but there's a movie out there called Moana. In Moana, they talk about having this earth god that they call Nefertiti. She's responsible for making everything grow and everything prosper on the earth, keeping everything balanced. And then they talk about another character in the movie called Tikal. Tikal throws lava at you, tries to destroy you, screams. It's really just kind of a scary energy, I guess you could say. And I hate to spoil the movie for you, but I got to make a point on this. Towards the end of the movie, Moana, the character, she has this green gem that she wears as a necklace, and it's called the Heart of Nefertiti. and their whole job is to put this heart back. Well, this Tikal demon has this big hole in the middle of his chest, and Moana, being courageous and full of love, asked Tikal to come towards her. And as this demon come towards her, where most people would probably run because this thing is really scary, she just said, "It's okay. I know who you are." And with that, she took that little piece and put it right into the chest of Tikal. And at that moment, Tikal blossomed and turned right back into Nefertiti. Moral of the story, they were the same energy. One was just damaged, and the other one was along the lines of perfection and healed. So what we're doing is we're offering redemption, and we're offering salvation. And to me, if you ask me, this is the highest calling that we can do. If any of this is God's work, this is God's work right here that we can do. We can help the disincarnated. We can help the people. All because of this Christ spark, we are connected, and we can help each other, especially the ones that are stuck in the shadow. When we work through the Christ spark, we're able to heal all of the pains and traumas that they've had from many, many different lifetimes. Maybe somebody got burned to death in a building fire or something like that. And now that they're dead, they're still holding on to these pains. These are what I would call astral lesions. Okay, we can cure all astral lesions through the Christ spark. Sometimes people pass away. They can no longer eat. They can no longer drink, but they're still holding on to those earthly cravings, I guess you could say. And so with that, they are hungry and they are thirsty, and sometimes that's all they want. They're just hungry. They want something to drink. They're thirsty and they can't do it, and they're having a real hard time being around people while it's happening. Okay, so we can feed them nourishing unconditional love energy, or whatever you want to make up. We can absolutely feed them and help nourish them and bring them back to a state of balance, all through the Christ spark. All right, so here's one that we're going to talk about: multiple unfoldment and unfolding of the energy bodies. Okay, this is huge because this is going to be something that's I'm hoping, opens up your guys' perspective and your abilities to help those that are disincarnated, that are still lingering around. It wasn't until I started doing clearings on people's houses where sometimes I would come across stuff that I would try and clear, but no matter what, I couldn't really clear it. I could always figure out what it was, but I could never figure out what I needed to do to get it to go. So it wasn't until I picked up a book named Spirit and Matter by Dr. Lacerda, who talked about apometry and unfolding of the bodies. And there was a man who was a predecessor to him. His name was J. Escogino. He's the one that also developed psychic capture. He also developed multiple unfoldment. And so what multiple unfoldment is, if you could think of it, it's an entity that has other entities attached to it. If we were a drug user and we had some sort of a disincarnated energy that was following us around or stuck to us for whatever reason, and let's say we accidentally overdose, we are now side by side with this entity, if not linked together with some sort of attachment. So what'll happen is if we have an entity inside of a house, something that does need to be cleared, and we try and clear it, and there's something that blocks it from leaving or blocks it and gets in the way of this healing energy to touch it, we have to figure out how to get to that, okay? So what that means is that we're trying to look for the seed of the moment, okay, or the seed of the entity. These are the kind of things that can lead to hereditary family illnesses, okay? I want you to think about this for a second. If we have your grandmother's loving. Everybody loves grandma. She's a super sweet lady. She would never do anything to hurt nobody, and you're probably right. But let's say grandma died of a brain tumor. Okay, grandma had brain cancer. She had leukemia, whatever. Okay, she has some sort of a cancer, some sort of a disease that she died from. Now, when she passes away, most of the time we're going to grieve for our loved ones. We love them, we miss them, and we feel bad that they're gone now, so we grieve for them, we cry. And although grieving is a healthy emotion, and is perfectly part of love and acceptable to go through, understand that because we have a physical body, we have a magnetic field that is intensely stronger than theirs. And so what happens is when this magnetic field cries out for these people in the world of spirit, all you have to do is think about them in order for them to be connected to you. So it's not like they're far, far away and you're talking and they never hear you. At any moment, if you think about them or talk about them, they hear it. They're absolutely connected because all you have to do is just imagine them. Just think about them, whatever was a moment or whatever, and that's how connection with spirit works. It works with images, and connection is extremely fast. So if we're grieving for somebody and we're crying for someone and we miss them, our grandma is going to want to come up to us and comfort us right away, probably put her arms around us, let us know, hey, I'm right here, I'm not going anywhere. So what happens is they come and they put their arms around us to hug us, and then they get stuck, and then they can't remove themselves. Our intense magnetic field keeps them stuck. They are stuck to us. And so what happens is after time, the energy of grandma's tumor and cancers starts filtering into the energy bodies of the other family members. Over time and developed, this is what turns into other kinds of sicknesses, different kinds of cancers, even skin issues, sometimes eczema and all those other kind of stuff can be a big byproduct of it. So I've seen it where someone has burned to death in a fire and was attached to somebody else, and because of that, they got really, really weird rashes and stuff. And so what I find is a lot of diseases are rooted in spirit attachment. So what we want to do is we want to be able to unfold the energy bodies. Okay, so if we're healing an entity and we're talking to an entity and we're saying, hey, do you feel better now that we healed you? And they're saying yes. And we say, okay, is there anybody else with you that's angry or upset that I'm talking to you right now? And if you get a yes with your pendulum, if you get a yes for it, then what that means is we say, okay, hold on real quick. Let me deal with this other one, and I'm going to come back and finish you. So then we ask to create a second field of force, a second one around this entity, bring them forward, contact them through their higher self. Okay, this is what's going to help us understand what unfolding the energy bodies is. You can say, please unfold the energy of this entity, or you can just say, create a second field of force on the second entity. The intention is more important than the wording. I'm more of a literal person, so my protocols are very literal. You don't have to use the same language as I use. All you have to understand is the structure and the process and how we do all this. And so hopefully the tools work for you. If not, work with what you already know and just apply your intention towards this direction, okay? So with multiple unfoldment, it's all about getting to the seat of the moment. For people that are new to this concept, it took me a little bit of writing notes in order for me to keep track how many I unfolded, how many times I unfolded, and how many entities were actually there, and I could go back through it. After a while of working with it, I can kind of keep mental track in my mind, but for anybody first introduced to this, taking notes isn't going to be a bad thing. In fact, I encourage it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the astral body. Now, in the world of spirit, it is not like what we understand when opposites attract. We can take two opposite sides of a magnet and they'll stick together. We take two positives, two negatives. There's that resistance between the two, and they usually push each other away and they don't quite stick, okay? So in the world of spirit and spirit attachment, like vibrations attract each other, okay? So what that means is if you're someone that has a lot of self-esteem issues, you're someone that really thinks negative about yourself, you think you're ugly, you think you're worthless, you think you don't have, the ability for people to love you, or just whatever the case is, this is your mindset. It's real negative, it's real downbringing. The type of people that have that kind of mindset can attract other entities that are along the same line. If you don't like you, you're going to attract an entity that don't like you. If you want to beat yourself up all the time, you're going to attract an entity that's going to want to beat you up. You have suicidal thoughts and tendencies, you're probably going to attract an entity that's killed themselves before. This is the way it works. And so anytime we have spirits come join us in our lifetime, a lot of people just want to hurry up and get rid of them for obvious reasons. I get it. But really, if we know what we're looking for, these can be a fantastic teacher and a guide for us, because what they're going to do is they're going to be a mirror to our inner conflict that's holding us back from experiencing our highest potential. Okay. Sometimes it's a drug addiction. Sometimes it's a belief system. Sometimes it's a prejudice. The list goes on, really. It all comes down to similar vibrations. Okay. So let's say you have an intense emotion like anger or hate. Okay. These emotions, this negative stimuli, whatever you want to call it, it can be charged with what's considered a polarity. This is what makes it stick. Okay, so same as like we just said before, like attracts like, okay? Positive attracts positive, negative attracts negative. So this toxic emotion that people carry within their body, This is the kind of stuff that's going to act like a magnet and attract other stuff to us, okay? And so when we talk about removing astral and emotional fragments, okay, this opens up a few different concepts, but one that we'll touch on real quickly, and that is energetic remnants left over from abortions, stillborns, miscarriages, and the absorbed twin. This is what we could consider astral fragments. When there is an abortion, the physical component of life is removed, but what remains is part of the energy bodies, okay? These are the parts that are there, and they can reside and stay inside the mother's womb. Now, what happens when the mother loses the child? Oftentimes there's feelings of regret, depression, unworthiness. Sometimes there's just a lot of like they regret doing it, and so they feel really bad for doing it, and they kind of like hate themselves for it. So what happens is these energetic remnants that reside in the womb, they get polarized, and they get polarized with a real toxic negative emotion. And over time, if left unchecked and just fed and fed and fed with more negative energy, these things can cause all sorts of problems, whether in the digestive tract, but most of the time with women, you're going to see it in the reproductive system. You're going to see endometriosis, ovarian cancer, ovarian cysts. This stuff can definitely affect the kidneys, the colon, the digestive tract, just a whole lot of different issues, okay? And this is a phenomenon that I believe affects more than 3/4 of the population on the planet, because when the mother has these remnants still left within the womb, let's say mother has an abortion, miscarriage, this kind of stuff. And then let's say years down the road, she gets pregnant again. And now she has a healthy baby that comes out just fine. Because this baby was inside of this womb, this can almost be considered as toxic womb syndrome when they come out. And so what happens is some of these energetic remnants are now attached to the living child that's coming out. And where it usually attaches is here in the upper back, just below the shoulders, on what you would call the thymus chakra. This is the thymus chakra, for those of you guys who don't know, it's called the seat of the soul. The thymus chakra is in charge of basically your immune system, your electrical system, the endocrine system, lymphatic system. It's very much connected to everything in your body. So if you're having autoimmune issues or any kind of circulatory or nervous issues, this would be an interesting place to look to see if you carry any astral fragments within your energy field. Okay, so back to inverting the polarity of the astral body. Okay, when we have an entity that's attached to somebody, or we have astral fragments that are attached to a person's energy bodies, we unfold their energy so that way we can analyze each specific layer specifically and treat it. Okay, and then from there we create a field of force. We create this field of force around either the entity, or we create it around the astral fragments. And then when we ask to invert the polarity of the electrons in the disincarnate's astral body, what that's going to do is it's going to unstick this energy for us. Okay, this is one of the steps that we need to understand is possible for us to start treating tumors, cancers, cysts, and deep-rooted spirit attachment. Okay. So when we facilitate our healing, we facilitate everything with permission through the higher self. Okay, so if I'm working on a client, I ask permission through their higher self. Do I have permission to work on so-and-so? If I give a yes, I proceed. If I get a no, I'll try again some other time. I trust spirit, and I trust that if they don't want me working on them quite yet, then I won't work on them quite yet. So I'm going to trust that. When we work on another entity, say an entity is attached to somebody else, we invert the polarity, we get them to unstick, we put them in a bubble with psychic capture. We don't just start working on it. We have to establish communication with the higher self of this entity. Reason why? Because even though a spirit can be malicious and it can terrorize people and it can be not fun to be around, it can hurt people, all this kind of stuff, right? They have free will. And the higher self does not ever intervene within the free will of the spirit, no matter how bad it seems to us, because it's all playing a part with his soul's journey. So what happens is, say we have a spirit attachment, or we have a spirit of something that's in the house, okay? Create a field of force around them. Then we ask universal knowledge, do I have permission to connect to the higher self of the entity that's in this home or on this person? And as soon as we get a yes, we say, all right. Then from there, we're able to scan the entity, And we're going to say, hey, do we have permission to send this entity healing energy? And when we get a yes, then we can start working through it. But if we get a no, we have to figure out why we're getting that no. And usually it's going to be because I'm not in a good time to focus. Maybe now's not the right time, or maybe it's a karmic reason why this entity is in someone else's life. And so until the lesson's learned, they're going to have to go through this. But we're here not to just say, hey, this is what you need to do. We're here to assist them. We're here to help them. And so we have to remember that even if it's a part of a person's soul journey or something that they have to kind of go through and experience, like they're not alone with this, and that we can help them with it. But ultimately, it all comes back to the old saying, whereas you can take you can lead a horse to the river, but you can't force it to drink. People are only going to absorb this information at their own pace. So we be patient, and we be helpful, and use discernment. If you know this person's going to be intrigued by knowing there's some kind of a malicious entity around them, maybe you can share it with them. If you know they're a really, really scared person and it probably wouldn't be a good idea to share this information with them, don't do it. You can just keep it for yourself. What I usually say is, there's just some residual energy in this house left over from the people that used to live here. I don't say, yeah, you got a guy that blew his head off in the back bedroom that is still thinking he's still alive, and he's really mad because now he has other people living in the home. So use discernment and just be cautious about what you share with people. Just ultimately understand that we're here to help. If we can teach people, that's why we're doing this videos, because I would love for you guys to understand some of this stuff so that way you can incorporate it into what you're doing. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, we're the ones that are here to help guide people. And that's what we're supposed to do, is we're supposed to guide people. So if we can guide them with love and courage and let those be the first and foremost things we guide with, then we're doing it right, okay? Also, non-human entities. This is a big topic. If you're dealing with like a poltergeist energy, or dealing with something that I think a lot of people believe, or a demon. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of something called an ifrit before. An ifrit, the people in the East would call them a jinn. Some people would also see them as a shadow person with red eyes. An ifrit is a non-human energy. And this energy comes from lower dimensional astral. Okay, it is non-human. It does not have a Christ spark. It is something that's created purely out of mental projections. Sometimes people fantasizing about wanting to see something bad happen to somebody, or fantasizing about just doing malicious things and getting revenge and just everything that goes with that. There's a lot of fantastic psychics and mediums on the earth, and most of them don't even know that they are. And so we're all really good at projecting our thoughts and images, and some people are very capable of creating some really weird things with their own traumas and thoughts. So when we deal with non-human entities, they can seem scary because, frankly, they can be terrifying, especially if you see an ifrit. I think that would probably be the closest thing that you can consider being the devil or being a demon or something like that, as an ifrit for sure. But these things get pulled through when people decide to use Ouija boards and just kind of pull through something that it'll come through because it wants to talk a little bit. But what happens is, once they get pulled through, is they don't know how to get back. And most of the time people know how to call upon some sort of energy and it'll step through. But it doesn't know how to get back to where it was, and it does not want to be on this plane with us. And so what happens, it terrorizes people because it's pissed off and it doesn't want to be here anymore. So what we're supposed to do is we take these things, we create a field of force around them. They are comprised of mental energy, so it would be depolarizing the negative mental stimuli. If there is any pain or any trauma that this thing has been through, we're going to neutralize all the toxic emotional trauma that this thing has endured from all lifetimes. And after we've done this, what we usually do, because it is mental energy, we don't merge it with a higher self. We don't cross it over to heaven or to the Christic planes. Where it goes is something we can call the universal mind. Okay, the universal mind is basically it's a separate dimension outside of time and space. Everything that's ever been created on Earth originated from a thought, and that thought is an area that all of us can collectively pull from. Okay, it's like a big ocean of energy that we can pull mental energy from. So sometimes people pull them through to create a bridge. Some people pull them through to create a new invention. Sometimes people pull them through to create supernatural powers that they would like to obtain. It just kind of comes down to the individual will of the person. But just because it's free will doesn't mean that we don't have to answer to cause and effect. I think that's probably the number one rule of spirit people need to understand. You can do what you want, but you also have to be responsible to deal with your consequences of what you've done. So that's kind of a quick little talk about what the difference between non-human and human energies are. So why do we want to heal and treat the disincarnate? Most of the time, they're stuck in pain and they need our help. I see a lot of people. I deal with a lot of stuff online. Some of you guys that see me in different Facebook groups or, on Instagram or some of this other stuff on there. I love reaching out and helping people. And I love being able to just kind of dive into the subject with people and why we need to heal. Unfortunately, in the world of spirit, that's kind of something that's also kind of fascinating for a lot of people. So there are some that are out there that really enjoy the, lack of a better word, entertainment value of having a spirit in their home. They want to say, oh, my spirit kept me up last night, or my spirit did this. It's exciting for them. They like talking about it. And so when you ask them, would you mind getting the spirit out of your house? And they're like, no, it's cool. We can live with them just fine. The fact of the matter is we're surrounded by them all the time. You don't need us to hold on to one because we're surrounded by much more than that all the time. But when we have deceased ones, especially relatives, and they're staying inside our house, they can create more sicknesses with the living that are there. They can affect your mood. They can affect different kinds of ways that you process information. Younger kids can get terrorized by this kind of stuff. I mean, it all seems like fun. And I know that there's a lot of interested people that are out there that are really enjoying this phenomenon. But if I can give you any kind of advice, just understand that if they're bothering you, it's because you can help them. A lot of us are sensitive and a lot of us are mediums and have these different abilities that are just waiting to be activated and waiting to be taking control in our life, So these energies, they see our light, and where they're at, it's cold and it's dark. And the only thing they know is that when they get close to us, they're warm and their pain goes away a little bit. And so they may not be able to leave our presence sometimes, and they'll follow us around because they don't really understand the concept of time when they pass away. I mean, we can have someone that says this spirit has been following me since I was a child, and now I'm an adult and I still can't get rid of it. And when you connect with the spirit, it may not even know that it's dead or feel that it's only been dead for like maybe a year at the most. They really don't understand their concept of time. They reside outside of it. And so because of that, they're very, very confused about a lot of stuff. I've seen it where there was a husband and him and his wife grew to old age. And he ended up passing away before her, and he made the promise that he was going to be with her forever and that he would never leave her. Just be careful what you say. That is very true, and it's very loving, and I think it's good. But here was the reality of it. He said he would never leave her. So what that meant is he stayed in the house. She passed away about 5 or 6 years after he did. He remained in the house for 20-something years afterwards, looking for his wife, because he thought she was in this house. She had moved on, and she was trying to get him to come with him, but he was so focused on having tunnel vision and just staying in the house saying, nope, I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to wait for my wife to get me. She'd been waiting for him all the time, but he basically couldn't look up out of a situation because he was stuck in just kind of an emotional state where that was all he could really perceive. So what we think they know and what they do know are usually two different things, okay? So like I said, they may not know that they're dead, and a lot of times they just need to be helped being enlightened or being counseled. When I connect to these different things, I try and explain to them sometimes, hey, from our perspective, do you understand that you now reside on the other side of the veil of what we would call death? Sometimes they say, yeah, and they get it and they understand. They're pretty convincing, and they're like, okay, I'll listen to you. Other times they're like, no, what are you talking about? Like maybe if someone died in an automobile accident, killed on impact or something like that, real sudden shock death, heart attacks, and some of this other stuff, right? Where this happens to them and it's so sudden that all of a sudden they kind of don't know that they're in that state, okay? So one of the tricks that I use with them to help get them to understand that they are spirit is as I'm talking to them and I say, hey, can you have you been in this situation for a little bit where it feels kind of weird? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, have you ever tried to talk to anybody and they don't hear you? Oh, yeah. And I said, okay, have you ever tried to touch anybody and they don't feel you? Oh, yeah. And I said, okay, do me a favor. One more thing. Can you look down and tell me, do you see any feet underneath you? And most of the time you're going to get a no. If you get a no, it's because the spirit now realizes that it does not have any feet and doesn't know what to think about it. The only other time I've ever heard when they say that they do have feet underneath them is because they're attached to a living person. Okay. And then there's a quick little trick you can do by getting them to understand that and to say that you're connected by the silver cord in the back of your neck to the entity. Can you feel this? And I'll snap my finger and send a pulse of energy to the back of their nape region, which is kind of just below the hairline. And it'll give them a little tug or a little zing. And all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, what the heck was that? And then we can help enlighten them and help get them understanding what's going on. We talked a little bit earlier about how disease is rooted in spirit attachment. I've even seen it recently where we have things coming from a past life where maybe they died of pneumonia or something like this, right? They were a child and they died of pneumonia. Now they've come through with someone else in your soul family that now you're in resonance with this past life. Now this energy of a child that has pneumonia is now attached to the physical body of the new person, and they're having all sorts of chest issues, and they don't really know what's going on. They go to the doctor, they get all these tests, they can't figure out what it is. Anytime I hear about someone going to the doctor and all these tests are on there and they can't figure out what's going on with them, these are my favorite ones to deal with, because I really love digging into that stuff, because I do believe almost all diseases are rooted in some sort of imbalance by chakras or sub-chakras or some sort of spirit attachment. So not always, but definitely. I mean, if you got someone who's got a broken bone, obviously it's from some sort of trauma. But if you got someone, especially with children that are born with like leukemia and born with like blood cancers and stuff, right? These kids have been around the earth not very long and they're already affected with a super rough sickness. You know what I mean? This is something that I always look for, spirit attachment. And so I want to help them as much. Okay. So when we help those, I mean, oftentimes people come into this lifetime and they might have a couple spirit guides with them. We usually have a family guide, someone that's within our family that will come back and assist us with the work that we do. And this is pretty common to have spirit guide or family guide or guardian angel. Okay. So the more that we help, the more that we're going to gain an army of light to assist us. Okay. When I would walk into buildings by myself to do a clearing, and people would be like, aren't you afraid? You're all by yourself. And, you know, I just kind of smile, because there's two things that I take comfort in. One is I'm never alone. We're always got company with us. We always have backup with us. And the more that we help, the more backup we're going to get is going to help us. So you might walk in thinking that it's just you, but when you enter a building and you got 20 other beings of light that walk in with you and can really assist you with the work that you're doing, that's what we're there to do. Is we're supposed to assist so that way they can help us. They help from their side of the veil, we help them from our side of the veil, and we come together and we do the work. Okay, this is the highest work that I believe we can do in our life towards the disincarnated and towards the healing. Okay, one of the things that I find too that I try and get people to understand, I had this woman the other day. She had the energy of an abusive alcoholic father-in-law that was still in the home. Okay, he was in the home, wasn't very fun to be around, was in a pretty rough state, needed a lot of help. So we assisted him, fed him, healed him, took away his pain, got him to merge with his higher self and go to the light. When this happened, spirits see a system, especially if you clear entities off of a land. Most of the time what happens is they'll go to the light, and then they'll come back trying to be like a guide, and they'll gather maybe other family members that are still stuck in the shadow or other spirits that are still stuck in the shadow, and they'll gather them and they'll bring them to you. So if you're someone that's interested in spirit release therapy and that's interested in crossing spirits over, just understand, if you put that intention out there that you want to practice this, they totally pick up on it, and they're going to be able to help you establish a system. Okay, there's quite a few people that I'll help out that I'll say, hey, I'll clear this from your house, but just wait, probably in about another week or two, you're probably going to feel something off again. It won't be the same, but it'll be similar. And so they hit me up, and then come to find out, now I'm dealing with a cousin that was a suicide, or I'm dealing with a child that was from a really long time ago that passed away when they were, children or something. So when we help family members, or when we help spirits that are basically residual hauntings and are stuck on the land, what'll happen is they'll go find other ones and bring them back to you, because now a system is established and this is what they do. Okay. So what I'll do before we get into this part real quick, what I want to do is I want to kind of give you a little crash course of going through these protocols. I have a specialty pendulum that I designed that I'd like to share with you guys right now. This is something that I call the Sekhmet pendulum. It vibrates at about, I believe it's about 3,300 on the Bovis, or excuse me, 33,000 on the Bovis. It is a violet spectrum, ultraviolet spectrum of light, extremely good for healing energy, very effective at clearing entities from far away. And what we're going to do right now is I'm just going to ask universal knowledge. We're going to go through some of these protocols. So let's say what we want to do, most of the stuff we're doing at a distance, this whole quarantine stuff going on right now, we can't necessarily go to people's houses. So that's the best part about this, okay? So let's say someone hits me up, hey, I got this thing going on in my house. Can you help me out? For me, there's usually two places that I like to look. And if any of you guys have ever worked with me before, you're going to know the two places that I usually ask to get a picture of. And one is going to be a bathroom or a hallway. The hallway seems to be a good one for me. I can usually pick up on the hallway really well. So what I would ask is, universal knowledge. Do I have permission to check in at the energy of this house that so-and-so asked me to take a look at? Okay, we get a yes for that. And so I'll say, okay. And at this time, mostly I hold my cell phone underneath it so I can see the picture of it, or I'll just look at the picture on the screen. Both of them work just fine. So as I'm holding it, I say, okay, universal knowledge, do we have any entities in this home? Okay. I say, thank you, clear. So let's just say that we have one entity in the home. Okay, let's say we got an earthbound human entity in the home. I say, universal knowledge, do we have permission to create a field of force around this entity? Okay. And this is where the pendulum Apometrics comes in. I use my snap, okay, and I use a count. And when I count with this, I know sometimes people like to say the command over in their head over and over. Some will just say it once and just let it spin until they get there. For me, I'm kind of ADD. My mind wanders, and so there's going to be something that I use to help keep myself focused, okay? For me, the beat of a drum is something that I find very hypnotizing. A slow, steady beat allows me to stay focused. So when I count, I snap my finger and I count energetic pulses. And every time I snap my finger and count, I imagine that someone's like taking a photo from the side. I see the flash. I see it, okay, as I'm doing this. This flash is going to be really necessary. You guys ever heard of Raymond Grace? That man's fantastic at visualizations, and I think that's why his work is so productive with what he does. He's really good at visualizing. Okay, so back to what we were saying. I say, okay, we just found out that there was an entity in the home. I'm going to say, okay, universal knowledge. I ask to create a field of force around this entity at this time in 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now you see I went back to north and south. Now it's ready for the next one. I'm going to say, okay, universal knowledge, do we have permission to connect through the higher self of this entity at this time to help give him healing energy? Yes, we got permission. Say, okay, universal knowledge, I ask to facilitate communication with the higher self of this entity at this time. Thank you. I start off by saying greetings. My name is Nick. I greet in the light and love of the Creator, and I'm here to help. I have been sent here by whoever reached out to you to check in on you and see if I can offer you some assistance. So the first thing I would ask them is, okay, can you hear me at this time? And I would get a yes, indicating that they can hear me. Most of the time they can't see us, but imagine how like when someone that deals with voices in their head and they can't see where it's coming from, what we're doing right now is the exact same thing to them, is we can get inside their mind and speak with them. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to direct the conversation. And I'm going to say, okay, my friend, can you tell me, are you in pain or discomfort at this time? Okay, and of course we get a yes because they are in pain and they do need help. And I say, okay, I can help remove your pain. Would you like for me to assist you at this time? And from here we get another yes. Okay, so at this time I say, okay, please relax, come close and open up to this healing energy. And at this time I would say, universal knowledge, I ask that we cure all astral lesions in this entity. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And like I said, you don't have to use astral lesions. You could say cure all wounds. You could say treat all injuries, whatever works for you. The intention is the most thing that matters. Okay. So after we cure their injuries, what we're going to do is we're going to work on their traumas and their memories. Okay. So we're going to say universal knowledge. I ask at this time that we depolarize all negative mental stimuli stored in the bank of memory from all timelines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Okay. And it is something that there was a lot of trauma, whether from growing up or whatever the case is. I usually just throw in there universal knowledge. I ask that we neutralize all toxic emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual trauma stored in the bank of memory. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now we're at a state where we've taken away all their pain, and we've taken away their bad memories from previous lifetimes or their past lifetime. Now what usually is left is they need to be healed all the way, and they need to be fed. So I say universal knowledge at this time. I'd like to please direct my energy towards the Christ spark of this entity. Allow us to send nourishing, unconditional love energy, and allow them to feel full, content, and complete once again. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And now they're in a state that their vibration has been raised. Most of the time, they can definitely perceive intelligent beings around them, beings of light around them. They're now in a vibrational state that they are now in the same space as some of this other stuff. So I'd ask them at this time, would you like to join your family and friends in the light once again? Okay. And as soon as we get a yes on it, we say, okay. Now hold on a second. Let me get someone that I think you'll recognize that will aid and assist us in this work. Then I say universal knowledge. At this time, I ask to call forth a family guide, someone that they'll recognize that will aid and assist us at this time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then you ask them, all right, my friend, do you see anybody there that you recognize? They say yes. You say, okay. Are they asking you to go with them? They say yes. Say, okay, will you go with them? They give us a yes one more time. Now remember, we started this by putting them in the field of force. They're still in this field of force right now, and we can still work on them. So I start praying for them, and I ask that we surround, protect, heal, and keep. Surround, protect, heal, and keep this entity in the light. Then we ask at this time to remove them from this house and all timelines, future, past, present, parallel, known, and unknown, and ask that we merge them back with their higher self. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. You can even add on top of it, may they receive peace and tranquility for all eternity. But one of the biggest things that we have to remember is to express our gratitude every time that we work on doing this kind of stuff. We have to express our gratitude because really it's an honor and a privilege to do this work. When we can illuminate the dark with the light and help them remember their own divinity, really what we're doing is we're pulling these energies that have been lost in the shadow, and we're bringing them back to a higher consciousness, and we're bringing them back and blending them back with their higher self in which they need to go back to. Okay, this kind of stuff, these things hang around people. They influence people. People can do really weird things when they're around this kind of stuff. And, the more that we clear this stuff up, I think the more it's going to liberate the people too. So it's a two-way street. So this is something that I am very passionate about. And I hope that some of this stuff has been helpful for you guys. This pendulum, I'll show you a little bit more. Okay, this is the Sekhmet pendulum. It's named after the Holy Mother Sekhmet from ancient Egypt. I suggest all of you look into her, known for transformative properties, also known as a warrior goddess and a patron of all healers in ancient Egypt. Okay, so this is something that will be available for purchase likely around July. For anybody that's interested in purchasing one, you're welcome to email me, nick.salzman@gmail.com. As you can see, I have a picture of this book. I'll bring up another copy for you. It's a pretty good sized book. It's pretty hefty and thick. Basically, if you guys are interested in the stuff that I talked about, okay, Apometric Pendulum Healing is the first book that I created. It's going to help go in a little bit more depth with some of these topics that we just went over, as well as cover some other stuff that we did not. And I'm letting you know that I will be having another book coming out that's going to be going over sub-personalities, multiple personalities, disassociated consciousness, and all that kind of stuff too. So that'll be the second book that's going to be coming out, hopefully around July as well. And so if anybody's interested in that kind of stuff, you got to be able to read some of this stuff first, or at least digest some of the first things, because you're going to need that before we go into the second one. We're going to get a little bit more in depth, and we're going to get a little bit more intricate in what we're doing. So depolarizing negative mental stimuli, connecting through the Christ spark, facilitating healing through the higher self, creating a field force. These are going to be things that are going to be essential if we're going to move on to the next phase of what we're going to do. I really enjoy sharing all this kind of stuff with you. I really hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. I hope that you find some tools out of this and adopt it in the work that you guys are doing, maybe even take it further than I am. And I just hope that this really helps shed some light on some less known subjects and really just replace some of that uncertainty and that residual fear with something that can be stronger and more powerful, such as knowledge. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity. I will be speaking again in the beginning of July for the West Coast Dowsers online conference as well. So if any of you guys are interested and see me talk again a little bit more about this, please tune into that. But until then, you can find me on Instagram, Pendulum Apometrics. You can find me Home and Health Energy Works on Facebook. And if you look on YouTube, you can find some of my videos. Just look up Nick Salzman Pendulum. I'm always interested to hear your guys' questions about stuff. You can look up nicksalzman@gmail.com. That's my email. Happy to hear any of you guys' questions. If you're curious about getting the book, if you're curious about ordering a pendulum, curious about some of the methods, just want to say hi and say thanks for putting the video together. All that's good too. I appreciate you guys being here, and I hope that all this was informative, and I hope you enjoyed it very much. Until next time, be well to each other. Stay safe out there.